Hello everyone and welcome to my video talking about the Pandaemonium Savage raid series for Endwalker. So coming out of just finishing this tier a few weeks ago, I'm still in my reclears, but I feel like I have gotten a good enough opinion on what I liked and did not enjoy with the whole expansion Savage series. So I figured let's make a tier list. I'll be talking about what I like, what I didn't like. There's not really a set of rules on why I enjoy stuff. Just how I feel each fights work for me. Keep in mind, this is my opinion. It's not the right one. It's not the wrong one. It's just my opinion. Your opinions are as valid as mine. So, yeah. So before we dive into it, I just want to mention, Endwalker was my first Savage experience as a whole. I did dip into Savage back in Eleventh Floor, but I didn't clear anything. And in Shadowbringers, I actually cleared Eden 1, but that's it. I didn't do anything else because I actually couldn't. I was on and off with Shadowbringers due to real life circumstances. But yeah, and with Endwalker, well, I really wanted to do the whole thing. So this is my real first experience with Savage. So keep that in mind. And yeah, let's get this thing started. So first off, we have P1S with Erictonios as an entry Savage, because this is the first Savage fight of the whole expansion, right? And I feel like as an entry, this is a perfect fight. It's not too difficult, but it's definitely a ramp up from Extreme, in my opinion. The mechanics were fun, in my opinion. I really enjoyed it when I did it. I did it in PF. I didn't have a static until P3 at that moment, so I did P1 and P2 in PF. But yeah, I enjoyed the mechanics. It's not super fast-paced, but I wouldn't say it's super slow either. Except at moments, sometimes it is. But yeah, the mechanics were fun. Like the chain mechanics, where it was targeting a set of chains would target 4 close people, and the 4 closest people, and another set would target the 4 farthest. I thought it was cool. I thought it was a really cool mechanic. And when he changes the floor to red and white, and it will also impact with the chains later on in the fight, as well as his flail, right? Because he doesn't have the same flail as in the normal mode. And that also interacted with the floor thingy, which I thought was cool. Like, it's an arena that changed, and I enjoyed that. And of course, Intemperance, which was a wall. I don't think it was a super big wall, in my opinion. I didn't think it was too hard, but people did the damage down strat for tanks, which I absolutely hated. They couldn't flex, like it was everyone in their position, don't do anything else, and no flexing whatsoever. Like I thought I was kind of miserable on this part. But yeah, so for the first fight, I would put it here. Keep in mind, I might change things around as I go. But yeah, I think it's right down in the middle, in my opinion, for P1S. So for P2, we have Hippocampus. This was a better fight, in my opinion. The arena was the highlight of the whole fight. Like, the fact that most of the arena was underwater, like there was toxic water everywhere, and you had to be on the platforms, and the crates would the crates would be a safe passage between the platforms, right? Because the water floods in the crates, and yeah, that was just fun. But if you remove that, I think it's all because of the arena. Because without the arena, the mechanics are pretty straightforward. Aside from a few, like the limit cut was interesting. And I also liked the laser stack, where you had to have the tanks in front. That's something I have never experienced before. and I thought that was pretty cool. Like, okay, that's cool because the tanks takes more damage and they can take more damage. So I thought it was something that was unique. I don't know if it was done before that, but I enjoyed it. And also, oh yeah, there was also the sliding mechanics where you have to slide into someone else so that you don't eject yourself out of the arena. I thought it was a lot of fun. Like, that was a really cool mechanic. I actually just remembered about that one. That's probably one of my favorite mechanics. But yeah, cool fight. I think I still put it in fun. I wouldn't quite put it there. It's close enough. Maybe I'll bump it up. We'll see. Okay, so next we're at P3S with Phoenix. This is where I started in the static. This static was already further in the fight than me. I had done one session in PF and we didn't get far. The static was further, but they were fine with reprogging. And we progged it at a decent pace, I feel like. But anyway, this fight, let's go with all the memes out. Yes, it's way too orange. Alright. That's a flaw. But I feel like that's the biggest one, the only flaw really, because the fight was really fun. It's definitely difficult. I think it's the most difficult fight in the first tier for Asphodelos. And this fight was difficult, but it was very fun. I like the tank buster because I was playing tank, right? So my opinions are more geared toward a tank point of view. But I really like the tank buster where there was 2 tethers and both tanks had to be on top of it, otherwise the party dies. but also, I like that in the second phase of the fight, both tanks were regularly taking damage. Well, the top 2 in aggro, which should be the tanks. But yeah, the 2 tanks were regularly taking damage, and that's something that you don't really see. Like, it makes it feel like this fight absolutely needed 2 tanks. The air fight, it doesn't feel like that. Like the phase 2 of P12 doesn't feel like you need 2 tanks. You need it because of the double tank buster at 2 parts in the fight, but aside from that, you don't need 2 tanks. It doesn't feel like it at all. Well, as this, you definitely need 2 tanks for the whole thing. Even if you have 1 main tank for the whole thing, the off tank has a purpose as a tank, and that's something that is very rarely felt like. I think for the whole expansion, it might be the best 2 tanks fight, in my opinion. Another thing I liked about this fight was the ad phase. There was not a lot of ad phase in this Savage, I feel like, and this was one of the best. No, scratch that, it was the best ad phase. You had to spread the Phoenix around the arena. They get revived when you kill them, and then they tether to people and they have to go across the arena once or twice, and then you have to kill them again, all that before the enrage finishes. And the DPS check on that was tight, but also the whole thing was very dynamic. It was very fun. There was no downtime during it. And yeah, that's all I have to say, really. Like, I just thought it was a very good ad phase. If you compare to like Extreme 5 ad phase, where it's like, I feel like it should not have existed in my opinion. But this one was peak ad phase design, in my opinion. So that's why I think this fight, I'm not sure if I want to put it there or there. It's very close, because I think there's a gap between those that I really enjoyed at the top and this. For now, I'll put it there. I think for now I'll put it there. I'll see later if there's a bigger gap with whatever I put it there and the top. Alright, next we have the final floor of Asphodelos, P4S, Phase 1, Hesperos. And I did not really have a good experience with this fight. I'm not saying it's a bad fight, alright? I think mechanically it has some clever stuff. Pinex was cool. I like Pinex, but there was something I didn't like about Pinex, was the fact that the strat we used required me to step away when I had the tank buster on me, basically at the end of Pionex. And I would lose uptime, and I did not enjoy that. Back then, I didn't know any better in Savage Raiding, so I didn't say much. But if I were to do it now with my current experience, I would hardly disagree with this and just like, no, we're doing something else so that we keep uptime. Maybe I'm being greedy, I don't know. I just feel like it was kind of really shitty. But anyway, I think it was cool. The Pionex was cool, like because you had the stack spread, knock back, stay away, all in combinations. That was pretty nice. And also the very first mechanic, which comes back later, but on tower form, where you had to take care of either a tether or rot, and depending on debuff you had, you didn't have to take care of those. Like it was really weird. I don't exactly remember how it worked, but I remember if you had debuff, if you had a debuff, you didn't do something. And you have no debuff, you had to do both and all that. Like it was hard to understand, and I feel like I'd have to study it again to understand it really, because it's been so long. But it was hard to understand, but I liked it. Like it felt kind of puzzly. It was very execution based, but it was a cool mechanic. And later it came back in tower form. It was the same principle, the same ideas, but it was fun. There's not much to say about it because the fight is fairly short. So I'll put it here. I think I prefer the Erectonios to Esperos one, but it goes here. Yeah. Now as for phase 2, I'll just put it there right away. I love that fight. The fact that the fight was very well segmented because of all the mechanics being called Act 1, Act 2, etc. And the final mechanic being called Curtain Call being the finale. I thought that was really cool because it makes good proc point in your mind. Right, like, okay, I'm on Act 3, like it's, you feel like you're making progress, so that was always hype getting one step further. But also I like that the boss would show what he's doing next. For example, he's showing all the towers, he's like, okay, I'm tethering these towers first, these second, these thirds, that's the order I'm activating them, that's how you have to resolve it. I thought that was pretty cool. That's something I really, really enjoyed. But I think that one of the things I enjoyed the most in this fight, and that's from a tank point of view, were the tank busters. Why? Because there were 4 different tank busters, and they came in pretty often, you know? Like, you had a regular tank buster, a shared tank buster, where both have to take it, farthest tank buster, where the farthest pair were being targeted by the boss, so basically the tanks had to be far and the party had to be in. And then the opposite, the closest person will take the buster, so the tanks had to be under the boss and the party out of the boss's hitbox. And I thought that was pretty cool. Like, what other bosses have more than 2 tank busters? Like, for real. I don't think there's a single boss that have more than 2 tank busters in this expansion, maybe even the whole game, I'm not sure. I'm not counting ultimates there. But, yeah, I thought that was something that was really cool. And of course, when you get to Curtain Call, that final mechanic, it's not particularly hard, but it's still a tight timing when you have to stretch your tethers, because you're making something explode, and you don't want 2 explosions back to back because everyone has a magic zone and will die from that second explosion if it's too close. And you know you're at the end, so like it's very stressful. Like you're very focused on when you have to move to activate your tethers, when you have to stretch your tethers, pardon. And you're very focused, and you're just feeling that final adrenaline, because you know you're there and you don't want to fuck it up. You don't want to be that one person to mess up the whole thing. I have to go over to the beginning. But I thought it was a real cool final mechanic because of that. Alright, so that's it for Asphodelos. Next we're coming to Abyssos. Okay, it's not all bad though. Like for example P5, let's put it there. Proto Carbuncle. It was a good step up from Externals. Like, it's the first fight of this tier, but it's also like the second tier, right? So I feel like it has to be a step up from the first tier as an introduction, and it definitely is. I feel like the mechanics were really well segmented, usually by the Ruby Glows, which I thought were all awesome. The Ruby Glows were very good mechanics. figure out where it will reflect, what isn't, etc. And also, sometimes you have to drop a ball of poison on a crystal so that it doesn't reflect anymore and all that. Like it has some very clever idea. And of course, we have to talk about Devour, which was a monster wall in PF. I didn't think it was that bad. Okay, I didn't see it blindly, to be honest. So, you know, not seeing it blind makes it a lot easier. I feel like blind Devour is probably difficult. But guys were up for a while. And 2 or 3 months later, people were still having problem with Devour. In PF, I feel like. And I didn't PF the fight. I was just looking at posts in Reddit and all that. And I was very surprised. Because 2 or 3 months later, I feel like people should know how to do Devour. Like, okay, you have you see the guide, you see how it works, it's insanely easy, and yet people would fuck it up all the time. Like that would surprise me. That did surprise me a lot. But memes aside, I think it was a great fight, very enjoyable. Yeah, that's why it goes there. Now, Agdistis. No, that's not Agdistis. Hegemony, my bad. P6. This is not a surprise, I think, that it goes all the way down there. So, I'm gonna go with what I liked about the fight immediately, because it's not all bad. First, the music. A banger. Everyone heard it, everyone loved it. A lot of people love it. So yeah, the music was good, and there was 2 mechanics that I thought was really cool. Kachishia 1 and 2. Sadly, Kachishia 2. Week 1, even day 1, think it'll be 3. There you go, problem solved. The mechanic is not done. Even like, as soon as you were a little geared, that mechanic was skipped. So, yeah, it's sad because I think it was actually a fairly challenging mechanic to resolve. Now, Kachishia 1 is not particularly difficult, but you had to look at stuff. You had to look at your debuff, you had to look at where you had to go, you had to pay attention to when you had to go. It was a lot of personal responsibilities, and I really enjoyed it personally. Aside from that, though, the rest of the fight is the same. It's just a bunch of X's and crosses that will cover up the whole arena. You have to figure out the safe spot and all that. It was always the same. Basically, the fight is very unmemorable. That's the thing I go with. It's like, when am I at this fight? Oh yeah, it's this one, I think. You just have to remember where the X's and crosses were placed. So like, oh yeah, it's that one. Okay, so I have to do this, blah blah. Like it was all very last second memories of how to do things, because I could not remember this fight. It's just very easily forgettable, in my opinion. Alright, next we have actually Agdistis this time. P7. So, no surprise again, goes all the way to the bottom. To be honest, I think mechanically it's not that bad. The real problem with this fight was the pacing. Because most of the mechanics, they're fine, I wouldn't say they're particularly exciting, but they're okay to resolve. The real problem is that it's very easy up until the 6 or 7 minutes of the fight. I did this fight in PF, and I think in 1 hour we got to these final hard mechanics. And even then, like the first final hard, the first hard mechanics of the fight, Purgation, there was a cheese trap that was found, a sleepo, and it made it very easy. Like, it definitely was not intended by the devs, and it made this very easy. So it was another minute and a half, because that mechanic is kind of long. It was another minute and a half of free, basically. And then you would get to the harvest, where they were the actual mechanics of the whole fight. I don't remember the order, but I know the first one was actually difficult. That first one was difficult. You had to react to where you had to go right away, and go there right away. And the position was actually pretty tight. So that one was actually hard, but I had fun doing it. Like, if I take the mechanic individually, I think it was fun. The thing is that it was all at the end of the fight. So every time you had to wipe, it was a 7-minute slog to get back to your prog point or wherever you wipe. And that's the problem, right? It took a long time to get back to the fun part. That by that point, was it really that fun? So yeah. And then the other harvest, the second harvest, cheese again. I think it wasn't as hard the first one, but it was still cheesable. The tanks would take most of the baits and just involve it. That's it. And then you go to the third harvest. By the end, it was skipped, but it wasn't even that hard to do anyway. Like you just have to go opposite of whatever you were baiting, and easy peasy. So yeah, I think the main problem with this fight was really the pacing. You would put one or two of the harvests across the whole fight instead of all being at the end, and it would have been an okay fight. I don't think I don't think I would have put in fun. Maybe I would have put it in fun, but definitely in okay. It would not have been boring. But yeah, because of the first 7-8 minutes being a complete slog, I can't put it any higher. Alright, next we had P8S, Hephaestus. I'm going to put it right there, because I think it's one of the best fights in this whole expansion. But holy shit was it suffering though. It was definitely a very hard encounter. So hard that it caused my first static to disband. Like, there was a lot of reasons to be honest, but whatever, I'm not going to dive into that. But yeah, this fight was very difficult. I really enjoyed it though. It was fast-paced, there was a lot of personal responsibilities. I remember you have to remember if you had a stack, a spread, a roll stack with multiple points of the fight. I love the snake phase. Both snake phase were really fun because there was a lot of personal responsibilities. It was just very clever mechanics in my opinion. The dog phase was not as good in my opinion, especially the first one. The second one I enjoyed resolving it, although it was a downtime. My only real complaint with this fight was the buff windows. Because if you had because the fight has two different timeline, right? If he goes dog first or snake first, and that's something I actually think is cool. The fact that you can go one or the other. In the face, yeah, you still have to go through both, but he's going one first and then the other second, and that can change. I think that was actually cool. My problem was that they didn't last nearly. They didn't last the same amount of time, and it's not even close. And because of that, the buff windows could get messed up. Like if it was dog face first, when it's time for the buff window, the group is split into two light parties, and the buff would not reach everyone, so it would be kind of sketchy there. I think that was the only real flaw of the fight. Aside from that, I think it was an amazing fight. So that's why I rank it there. Now next we have Hephaestus 2. P8S Phase 2. I don't think it was as good as the first form, but it was still pretty fun. The thing is that this fight is both slow and fast in my opinion. Slow because like the mechanics come in really slow during the fight, interrupted by a few auto attacks, which I thought the attacks were cool because it's a mini tank busters and both tanks had to take it, otherwise it's just too much damage. I thought that was pretty clever. I like that idea, and at the same time I wish they would use that a bit more, because in total you take like 6 auto attacks or something like that across the whole fight. So it's not really that much. It was a good idea, just not used enough. But yeah, the thing is that like it does a mechanic, a few auto attacks, mechanic, raid wide, mechanic, auto attack, and I know boss does that, but with this boss it felt slower. But the mechanic themselves could be fast. For example, the best example I can give is natural alignment, which I thought was a really fast mechanic. You had to react really quickly if you had a spread or a stack, or if you had a fire or ice to do. And yeah, there was a lot of reaction to that, and it was a difficult mechanic in my opinion, but it was fun to resolve. Now of course the main mechanic of this fight was high concept, and I think it's fun to do. I think it would be better if you had to solve it, because it's a puzzle, right? And we didn't really have to solve it because, well, guys were out there and all that, so we just have to execute. But I think it was fun to execute anyway. It would have been better to solve it, but that's how it is. So I think it's the nature of puzzle fights. Oh yeah, another thing I didn't enjoy that much with this fight was the very final part, when after High Concept 2, he cast what's it called, Domination, I think, and there's towers that pops. Like, that's very random finale for a fight. Like, it feels very undeserved. It's very easy. It doesn't fit anywhere with the rest of the fight, in my opinion. So, but aside from that, I think it was fun. I think, yeah, I think I put it there. Not better than Erictonio's, not quite as good as Hippocampus, I think. All right, and now we are entering into Anabesio, the last raid tier of Endwalker, and we start with Coquitos. So once again, this is another entry to Savage, but this is the last tier of the expansion, so the ante has to be bigger in my opinion. I feel like no more entry, for me personally, I feel like there's no more entry to Savage, in my opinion, at this point. It should be a step up. This fight was not a step up, in many ways. For the most part, it was stacking, spreading, and all that, and the stack and spread were pretty cool in my opinion. They were very well done, but I think it's just too easy because it's a bit too much of that. Yeah, I'd say it's too much of that. Like, there was no mechanics that were particularly hard, aside from the first limit cut. The first limit cut, I think, is actually harder than Devour in P5. Especially if you don't do the GP strat. The GP strat makes it very easy. But if you don't do that, I think it's actually a hard mechanic. When we first did it, we went in blind. We actually went in blind. No guides up until limit cut. We actually solved limit cut, but then we looked at the guide. We didn't do the rest blind, sadly. We looked at the guide for limit cut and we found the GP strat, and we decided to do that instead. But the strat we found was actually the Krille strat, the Team Krille strat that they use. The strat Team Krille used. There you go. So, and it was basically the exact same thing. I'm like, oh my god, we figured it out. And it's a mess. It's not necessarily a mess, but it's really hard to execute. I feel like that's for a Savage. But aside from that mechanic, the rest of the fight is very tame. I don't think it's any difficult whatsoever. It's fun. It's fun though, but it's not particularly difficult. And because of that, if it was the second tier, like if Coquitos was in the second tier, I feel like he could have been taking the place of Proto Carbuncle, because it is a step up from Icternios, but it is not a step up from Proto Carbuncle, and because of that, I have to take a point down. Alright, P10. A fight that is very divisive in the community, as far as I can tell. And personally, yeah, it is my favorite fight this whole expansion. Probably. I still have to think about it a bit, but it is. Right now, I'm putting it at the top. The mechanics were so fun from beginning to end. There's nothing I hate about this fight, I think. The tanks had a lot of things to do. We get flung away by the tower tank buster. We also had to do a shared tank buster, which it's two tank busters, but like it was just very proactive. The bombs mechanic, where you have to look at the debuff to know which order you have to spread or stack and stuff like that, was you really needed to be active all the whole fight. There's a lot of personal responsibilities. My bad. And this is what I like about fights. When there's a lot of personal responsibilities, I feel alive. I feel like I have to do something, and I love it. The more the more personal responsibilities, the more I love a fight in general. This fight just had a ton of it, and I really enjoyed it. Of course, there's Harrowing Hell at the end, which is, well, the name says it, it's hell. But like making that wall is all to survive Harrowing Hell was a very clever idea. Like it was it's one of the most unique things I've ever seen in a fight in this game, and I just thought it was amazing. Like, it's just really fun. It wasn't hard to figure out, like, in the sense that when I did normal mode, I was like, and we saw the ring hell, I was like, we will have to build a wall there. And that's exactly what we had to do. And it was fun. So yeah, this fight goes to the top, no hesitation for me. Amazing stuff. Alright, next we have P11, Themis. Okay, I'm not sure how much of a hot take this is. I don't feel like a lot of people do this. I think most people put it in like it's an okay fight. For me personally, for me it was the worst fight. Yes, even worse at P6 or P7. Let me explain. I said P6, there was some fun into it. Let's forget the music for a sec. There was a mechanic in P6 I had fun with. In P7, I had big fun with some mechanics, and I feel like the pacing was the biggest problem with it. In P11, there is not a single mechanic I enjoy. I find them all equally boring. Well, not equally boring. There's one I find more boring. I'll get to that. It's always the same thing. There's 3 mechanics. It's either stack, spread, partners, and all that. It's always the same thing. With one exception, and it's the Dark Current mechanic where you just spin around the arena, which I don't understand why it's in the fight. Like, this is an extreme mechanic, it's not a savage mechanic, it's even less a third fight of the last tier mechanic. So yeah, that was single-handedly the worst mechanic. But the rest is always exactly the same thing. There is no deviation whatsoever to this fight. Even if you have mechanics like Shadow Messenger, Dark and Light, and Ladder of the Law, it's always the same thing. There's no changes whatsoever. Shadow Messenger combined stuff, which is okay, but it's still the same thing to me. There's no difference. Ladder of the Law is basically Shadow Messengers with the tethers. Which I have to admit one thing though, and if my static sees this, I'm sorry in advance. I never remember what to do in Ladder of the Law. I never remember because I'm falling asleep at this point, and when I get the tether, I'm like, oh right, what do I need to do? And it's always a struggle for me to remember. I can't remember this fight. It's so freaking boring. I don't like it. For me, it's the worst fight this whole expansion, and it's sad. I know there's like a lot of comparison with Eden 11th, and I looked at the video because I never did that fight, the Savage one. I looked at the video and I can't say the similarities, but it looks more fun, to be honest. E11 looks more fun than this, and I never did E11, so like there's no like, how can I say this? Oh, the first one was better because it was the first one, right? For me, P11 is the first one, and no, it's just boring from beginning to end. So yeah, I'm very sorry, but this fight is the worst for me. Alright, next we have the final floor. Athena! That fight was cool. The phase 1 of Athena was really, really cool. Lots of personal responsibilities. The arena was awesome. The music is a banger once again. But yeah, lots of personal responsibilities. I thought the mechanics were really clever for the most part. I just wish that tank-wise there was something more to it, because the Tank Buster is the same as P8 basically. And aside from being a support and do the stuff that support will do, like the towers and the during a Paradigma 3, I think it was, where 2 support will get towers, two other support will get X's and crosses that you have to drop. Like, it's very like, it's not a tank thing, it's just a support thing. Tank wise, there's not much to this fight, but mechanically just a ton of fun. It's a very reactive fight, especially after the limit cut phase. Like that first mechanic it's very reactive, very quick mechanic. It's actually quite difficult to do, but I really liked it. The one thing I'll put against is, in normal mode there is an ad phase, And in this Savage, it replaced with Limit Cut, where yes, there are ads appearing in the middle and shooting lasers or doing a random AoE in the middle that no one cares about. Like, it's weird. It's weird. Like, I fully expected an ad face, and it wasn't the case. And I feel like they could have made something pretty cool with it. So this fight will go. Do I put it there? Yeah, I'll put it there. Yeah. And now, the final fight of this whole expansion, Palace Athena. It was okay. So first thing first, the music, I don't like it. Simple. In fact, it's the Ultima music. I just don't like it. Ultima herself is great. I like the fact that they linked with the whole thing with Ultima and all that, and that's great. But I never liked the music, and this version is better, in my opinion. So, with that said, let's go more into the fight itself. And oh my god, this fight is so slow. It's massively slow. Nothing happens for the first 2 or 3 minutes. Like, once you saw these mechanics, they're freebies. They're easily freebies. There's nothing happening in those mechanics. They're really easy. In fact, I would say the fight starts with caloric 1, and even then, it's really not that hard either. You solve those really quickly. Well, fairly quickly, and after that, just making sure you don't mess up your debuffs and read them properly and just react accordingly. Like, it's really simple. The maneuvering is very simple. The only hard mechanics I would argue is Pangenesis, and even then, if you take the time to look at what you have to do, you look at your number, and then you determine one of 2 spots that you have to go. That's basically it. Well, you have left and right, but like, you determine left or right, and then is it this spot or this spot? That's it. And then you do the same thing every time. It's very easy. In fact, I think the second time we saw Pangenesis, we actually solved it. Okay, we messed it up a few times afterwards, but we solved Pangenesis on the second time we saw it. Of course, we saw a guide, but we expected to spend a bit of time there, and no, we actually went through it really quickly. But yet, the whole fight is just very simple. There's not a lot of movements involved. I think the biggest movements that you have to do is during Pangenesis and classical concept, and even then you're standing around a lot during this mechanic as well. And when I say classical concept, I mean the second one, because you have to go to your original spot and then to your new spot. So yeah, but even then, you're not moving that much. The whole fight, you're not moving that much. So you would almost think I would put it in boring, and I almost did, to be honest. But it was okay. The only fight that was just okay. So looking back at all this, I think there's 2 things I want to swap. Yeah. When I think back, I think I enjoyed P3S a bit more than P4S Phase 2. But I think maybe like this. Because there's a gap between this and Protocarbical. Let's go with this. Yeah, there's definitely a gap there, in my opinion. And I think I'll bump this one up. Yeah, I think I'm happy with this list right now. This is how I will rank them. P10 first, followed by P8S Phase 1, P12, P5, P4 Phase 2, P3, P5, P2, P8 Phase 2, P9, P1, P4 Phase 1, P12 Phase 2, P6, P7, and then P11. Yeah, that is my ranking for this. Like I said, this is just my opinion. Your opinion is as good as mine, and if you want to share it, please do so. I would like to read it. So, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe for more content. So, yeah, see you in the next video.